Before sunrise, Los Angeles looked calm enough to hide anything. In a vacant lot on a quiet street, that illusion ended. One witness stopped cold, unable to understand what she was seeing. Within minutes, the silence gave way to sirens, footsteps, and dread. Detective Samuel Harlan arrived knowing only that the scene felt wrong. His partner, Leo Mercer, read the ground the way other men read headlines. What they found would be described for decades, but never fully explained. By the end of that morning, a shaken city was already leaning closer. Harlan said little, but the look on his face told the truth. The morgue offered answers, but each answer seemed to deepen the horror. Soon, a file began to take shape around a young woman with many stops and no stable path. Her name was Evelyn Hart, at least the name this story would give her. She had the look of someone who belonged near bright lights, not police files. She drifted through Hollywood with the kind of hope the city often borrowed and rarely returned. Her room was small, temporary, and filled with signs of reinvention. In the mirror, she seemed determined to keep becoming someone new. Friends remembered charm, uncertainty, and long stretches of not quite saying what was wrong. She had moved through terminals, rented rooms, and short-lived plans. At times, she appeared to be waiting for someone. At other times, someone seemed to be waiting for her. One late-night encounter near a parked car would become one more thread in a tangled timeline. Los Angeles glittered around her, but the glow hid very little safety. People in boarding houses noticed who came and went, even when they pretended not to. Harlan and Mercer began with the people who had watched from the edges. Every room produced another scrap, another memory, another missing hour. Reporters moved even faster than detectives, sensing a story too dark to let go. The presses thundered, and the city learned her face before it learned the truth. From downtown stands to corner cafes, everyone seemed to carry a theory. Inside the police office, theories multiplied faster than facts. Maps, names, and locations began to crowd the walls. Far from the noise, Evelyn's mother was left with the kind of call no family ever forgets. A ringing telephone became the sound of a life breaking in two. Grief arrived before clarity ever did, and before the family could breathe, the press was already outside. Then the case turned stranger. An envelope arrived, as if the killer wanted a seat inside the investigation. Mercer opened it carefully, and the room changed. Personal belongings meant one terrible thing: the sender had been close enough to take them. Soon after, the phone rang with a voice that offered no face. The caller sounded calm, almost amused. When the line went dead, frustration hit harder than fear. Switchboards lit up, operators moved quickly, and still the city kept its secret. Witnesses like Dorothy Vale were brought in and asked to remember the smallest details. She described Evelyn as lively one moment and unreachable the next. Bars, night spots, and casual acquaintances became part of the hunt. Harlan pressed bartenders for names that might never have been real. Motels entered the story with their thin walls and temporary guests. A room left behind suggested haste more than closure. Mercer searched through scattered belongings for order. An address book and a handful of receipts offered movement but not certainty. So the detectives built a timeline, hour by hour, place by place. They tried to restore the ordinary rhythm of Evelyn's final days. On paper, she still looked like a young woman chasing possibility. In memory, she also looked alone. Somewhere between public charm and private uncertainty, the trail narrowed. There were hints of company, but no one solid enough to hold. The suspect board filled up with names, faces, and growing doubt. Police lineups produced attention, not resolution. Questioning brought contradictions, but no clean answer. Every time one suspect seemed promising, another detail pulled the case apart. Confession letters began to arrive from men eager for notoriety, pity, or both. Mercer learned that false certainty could waste more time than silence. Forensic pieces were measured, cataloged, and studied with care, but evidence without a clear owner remained only a shadow. The city itself became a puzzle of roads, sidewalks, and missed encounters. At some point, Evelyn had stood beneath a street lamp, waiting. At some point, a car door had opened. At some point, hesitation had given way to trust, pressure, or necessity. Then the sedan disappeared into the dark, taking the last clear moment with it. Even when detectives retraced roads and searched roadside ground, the night refused to speak. The board in their office grew heavier with crossed-out certainty. Meanwhile, the newspapers kept feeding the public a legend. Radios carried the case into homes where strangers argued over a woman they had never met. Her mother endured the terrible transformation from private grief to public spectacle. And Harlan, who had seen too much already, began to carry the case like an unfinished debt. Mercer kept turning pages, hoping repetition might reveal what memory had missed. But the anonymous voice behind the phone calls stayed one step ahead. A booth might hold the echo of a threat, but never the man himself. Eventually, reports were stamped, filed, and set into the machinery of an unsolved case. Years passed, but the question never really left Los Angeles. The file aged, yet the mystery remained young enough to trouble every new generation. When researchers opened the boxes again, the old paper still carried the same unfinished weight. Fresh eyes studied the evidence and found what others had found before: possibility, not proof. Suspect walls changed, but certainty never settled. Libraries, archives, and private investigators all took their turn chasing the same ghost. Even the place where she was found became part of the legend, ordinary ground stained by memory. And through all the retelling, one fact resisted the myth. Before she became a headline, Evelyn Hart was a real young woman trying to build a future. The detectives who chased her killer were left with a board full of fragments. The city kept its corridors of silence. Its map still looked less like a backdrop than an accomplice. Somewhere in that vast maze, the truth once moved in plain sight, but anonymity proved stronger than publicity. And that is why the case still feels unfinished. Not because people stopped looking, but because the answer never stopped slipping away. In the end, what remains is not only the mystery of who killed her, it is the unsettling thought that the person responsible may have watched the frenzy, heard the theories, and quietly walked on. And somewhere beneath the legend, the real woman is still waiting to be seen clearly.